Because my dad had an affair, my parents split up when I was 16. I'm torn because they want to get married again. Giving away my feelings to people I don't know on the internet is something I never thought I'd do. But now I'm here trying to figure out what's going on with my life. Gladys, my mom, is 55F and I'm 28F. She has been my best friend, confidante, and rock for as long as I can remember. We've always had a special link that I thought could never be broken. Everyone in our small town of Millbrook knew the Johnsons when I was a kid. Earl, my 57-year-old dad, was a wealthy real estate developer who was known for his charming smile and ability to close any deal. Mom was a great housewife. She always volunteered at school events and held parties for the neighborhood. Our family looked like the kind of family everyone wants to be. People were always coming and going from our house on Maple Street. I remember sitting on a stool in our sunny kitchen for hours on end, while my mom baked her famous chocolate chip cookies. Dad would be working in his home office when the smell would come through the house. Before going back to work, he'd sneak a warm cookie, wink at me, and mess up my hair. It felt like we were the stars of our own show during those times. The weekends were for family trips. Getting into Dad's nice UV, we'd go to nearby towns or the state park to walk. Our mom always brought the best picnics, and her fried chicken was famous in our family. It makes me think of my dad trying to fly a kite in the park while his tie flapped in the wind from having just come from a meeting. Mom and I would laugh as the kite dove and swooped. It never quite got into the air. But things weren't always picture perfect. It was late at night, and Dad hadn't come home yet. Mom would sit by the window with a cold coffee. The next morning, she'd say it didn't matter because he was working late on a big job. For some reason, I chose to believe her because it was easier than the other option. When I turned 16, everything changed. And I had just gotten my learner's pass. It was a very hot July day. I couldn't wait to spend time driving with my mom. When I jumped into the kitchen, ready to leave, she was sitting at the table with tears in her red, puffy eyes. At that point, she told me about the split. The weeks that followed were a blur. When Dad moved out, he took the laughter and love that used to fill our home with him. Pieces of the truth came out over time, like about his affair with his young secretary and the secret apartment he kept in the city. He had been living two lives for years. I was really mad. At our dad for lying to us, and at his secretary for being the other woman. But mostly at myself for not noticing the signs. Everything made sense now, but in the worst way possible: the late nights, the strange calls, and the work trips that seemed to keep coming up. Mom was very sad. She quit her bright job as a teacher to help my dad and raise me. At 43, she was on her own, didn't have a job, and had to take care of her teenage daughter. I saw her fight to keep it together while she looked for work during the day, and cried herself to sleep at night. We had to cut back. We are leaving our lovely home on Maple Street for a small apartment with 2 bedrooms on the other side of town. To help pay for things, I started working part-time at a nearby diner. My old neighborhood friends slowly moved away because they didn't like our new lives. Mom and I leaned on each other through it all. We'd talk about everything and nothing late into the night. She would talk about her college days and the goals she had to put on hold so she could be a wife and mother. I told her what I hoped would happen in the future. What I worry about with college and how I feel about the boy in my math class. As we sat on our used couch with hot chocolate in our hands. Those nights were when our relationship went from being mother and daughter to being best friends. Also, Dad stopped being a real person in our lives. He sent a stock card with a check instead of being at my high school graduation, which he missed. Mom cried happy tears with me when I got into State University and helped me move into my room. Dad told her happy birthday 3 days later through a text message. Even though things were hard, or maybe even because of them, my mom and I got better. I was amazed as she changed into someone else. She went back to school and worked as a receptionist part-time while taking online classes. There was no time when I was prouder of her than when she walked across the stage to get her teaching certificate. Things got better over time. After getting my business degree from college, I got a job at a small company in the city. Mom taught 3rd grade at the nearby public school and looked really happy. We still had dinner every week, going back and forth between my small apartment in the city and her cozy home in the country. Then, during one of our dinners about 6 months ago, Mom dropped the bomb. She had talked to her dad again after seeing him on social media. She said she was ready to try again with him because she had forgiven him. I was shocked. As I tried to understand what she said, my fork kept slamming into my plate. After everything he did, how could she forgive him? The holidays she missed, the money problems, and the night she cried herself to sleep? I told her how much pain he caused and how he left us when we needed him the most. But Mom said that people can change and should be given another chance. I felt more and more uneasy as the months went by and Mom and Dad started dating again. That's where they had their first date 40 years ago, and they went back for dinner. They went to the coast on the weekends and posted 2 cute couple selfies on Facebook. Even though Mom seemed happy, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that this was all going to end in another broken heart. Mom asked me to come to her house for dinner last week. I was shocked to see my dad's car in the garage when I got there. When I walked in, they were both in the kitchen, making spaghetti sauce the way they always do while Mom set the table. They told me over dinner that they were getting married again and wanted my permission. It felt like the ground was gone from under my feet. When I bit into the spaghetti, it turned to ash. I couldn't hold back my feelings. It was like years of anger and hurt were finally let out. I told my dad that he had hurt us and missing important events in my life. When I told my mom I was upset that she was so willing to let him back in, I felt like she was giving up all the strength and freedom she had worked so hard to build. They said that they had both changed and grown over the years to try to explain. Dad said he was sorry for what he had done and wanted to make things right. Mom said she thought in second chances and that they should fight for their love. However, all I could hear was the sound of my world shaking apart. They called me back to talk it over, but I didn't answer. I left the dinner in tears. I got lost in my car for hours and kept thinking about the night before. When I finally got back to my apartment, I fell asleep on my bed because the person I trusted the most had let me down. I do not know what to do now. Even though I love my mom, I can't agree with this choice. I'm afraid my dad will hurt her again because I don't trust him. The strong, independent woman I looked up to and my best friend are both leaving me. What should I do? Should I try to go along with their choice for Mom's sake? If I stand my ground, I might hurt my friendship with her. Should I do that? For some reason, the thought of having to play happy families with the man who left us makes me sick. But the thought of losing my connection with my mom is just as terrible. I'm not sure what to do and would really appreciate some help. How can I keep my mom safe without making her feel uncomfortable? What should I do now that my dad is back in our lives after all these years? Is it possible to get over my hurt and anger? Or do I have every right to feel this way? I'd welcome any help, because I feel completely lost right now. To say it's been a roller coaster since my last post a month ago would be an understatement. Thank you all for your help and advice. During this rough time, your words have been like a lifesaver. I didn't answer my mom's calls or texts for a week after the terrible dinner. I worked hard and stayed late at the office before taking on any job that came up. But you can only avoid things for so long, especially when it comes to Gladys Johnson, a mother with a lot of drive and a skilled third-grade teacher. She came to my flat on a Sunday morning with a bag of fresh bagels and a stiff upper lip. When I opened the door in my pajamas, I heard a mess. She just said, "Sweetheart, we need to talk." We sat at my small kitchen table, which she had helped me choose when I first moved to the city. Mom began to talk as we spread cream cheese on our bagels. She said she was sorry for telling me the news so quickly, knowing it was a lot to take in. Then she really told her side of the story. It was the first time I heard about how much pain she was in during the breakup. She told me about how she used to stare at the ceiling at night and wonder what went wrong. In the grocery store, she felt embarrassed when she saw her dad's girlfriend. She also talked about needing help to pay her bills, which she used to do without any trouble. But then she told me about how she was getting better. I didn't know that she had gone to therapy. She had worked for years to deal with her hurt and anger and boost her self-esteem. Forgiving her dad wasn't about forgetting what happened, she said. It was about letting go of the anger and bitterness she had been holding on to for years. She told me that holding on to that anger was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Her eyes were shining with tears that she hadn't shed yet. For my own good, I had to let it go. She also said that her dad had been to therapy. It looked like the end of his second marriage had woken him up. He worked on learning why he did what he did in the past and making things right. Mom told me that they had a lot of long, hard talks about the past and what they thought would happen in the future. What I was hearing made me feel confused instead of angry. This wasn't the story I told myself about how they got back together. I thought that Mom would fall back into old habits and Dad would come in with big words and empty vows. The truth was a lot more complicated. But I still had my doubts. Hurt from years ago doesn't go away overnight. Mom said she was fine with putting off the wedding for a while. So I have time to think about everything and maybe try to get along with my dad again. Mom agreed right away, which made me feel better. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand, telling me, "Sweetheart, I care about how you feel. We don't want to do anything hasty that could hurt our relationship. You can take as much time as you want." Mom set up lunch dates for Dad and me over the next few weeks. There was no bias in the first meeting, which took place in a city cafe that neither of us had been to before. I got there early and almost ran away when I saw him come in. His once dark hair had gray streaks in it, making him look older than I remembered. He sat down and smiled uncomfortably. For a moment I saw a flash of the dad I remembered from when I was a kid. At first it felt weird. It had been years since we really talked to each other. We started to talk slowly though. He asked what I did for a living, and I told him about my tough clients and fun projects. He talked to me about his job and how he had cut back to focus on projects that would help the environment. After that, he said sorry. He needed to say sorry for his mistakes as a father, not just in general terms. He said he was selfish and cowardly, and he felt bad about the hurt he had caused us. He talked about his time in therapy and how he had worked to improve himself. I listened, my feelings going back and forth between anger and a strong need to believe him. However, it was clear that words were not enough. Before I would even think about trusting him again, I had to see that he would act the same way over time. We agreed to get together often, for just the two of us, to try to get back together. I am trying to keep an open mind, even though it is hard and sometimes makes me feel bad. The wedding plans for Mom and Dad have been put on hold because they're still together. Things are moving slowly, which makes me feel better. Mom tells me that they're working through their problems in a healthy way while they're in couples treatment. Every month, we're having dinner as a family. The discussions in the first one were tense and forced. It gets a little easier each time, though. We laughed together when Mom told us a story about her students. Still not totally on board with them getting back together, but I'm trying to be happy for Mom. When she talks about her dad, her eyes light up with happiness, which I haven't seen in years. I'm working on it every day. The relationship I have with my mom is getting stronger, and I'm slowly getting to know my dad again. It's not easy, but I think things will become clearer over time. Again, thank you all for your help. Your stories about things that happened to you that made me feel less alone in this situation have helped. As things go on, I'll let you know. Update 2, it's been 3 months since my last post, and I'd like to let you know about some changes. Sometimes, life will surprise you in strange ways. These past few months have been full of those times. The family dinners happen every other week now, so they're not unusual. They still feel a little off, but not as tense as they were before. Dad has been showing up every day, not just physically but also mentally. He asks me about my job, remembers things about my friends, and last month he even helped me figure out what was wrong with my car. Since we're talking about cars, that brings me to a big event that happened not long ago. Dad asked me last month if he could take me to lunch by myself. I wasn't sure, but I agreed. He picked me up in his car, and all of a sudden, a strong memory hit me. When I was 15, my dad taught me how to drive in a parking lot that was empty. I was scared and had my hands on the driving wheel too tightly, but my dad was patient. I felt safe and calm as he talked me through each step. When I finally got my car in between the lines, he gave me a huge high five, which made us both laugh out loud. In his car again after all these years, I had a lump in my throat. There were a lot of changes since then, but here we were, trying to get back to some form of that father-daughter bond. My dad gave me an envelope at lunch. His words were written down because he couldn't find the right words to say to me in person. I opened it with shaky hands and began to read. It was a long and sad letter. Dad told me he was sorry he missed all the important events in my life, like my high school graduation, getting into college, and getting my first job. He said he felt terrible that he wasn't there, and that he had caused so much pain. He wrote that he felt like he was just watching his daughter's life go by through social media posts and stories from her mother. The part that really moved me was when he wrote about how proud he was of the woman I had become without him. He said that showed how strong my mom was and how strong I am. He talked about specific things I had done, like the marketing campaign I ran last year, the half marathon I completed, and even the container plant I started on the balcony of my apartment. It made me happy that he had been paying attention and knew about these things. I truly felt sad as I read that letter. It didn't fix everything overnight, but it was a start. Told my dad I needed some time to think about everything and thanks him for being honest. The relationship between Mom and Dad is still moving slowly. The wedding plans have been put on hold for now, and my mom says they're not in a hurry to do anything. Their main goal is to build their relationship back up on stronger ground. I also spend more time with my mom by myself. We've started going to the spa once a month so that we can unwind and talk freely. One of these days, Mom talked more about how she learned to forgive and heal. She talked to me about the day she gave up being angry for good. They were at a yoga camp she had booked for herself for her 50th birthday. As she meditated, she understood that being angry with herself was making her feel worse. It felt like taking off a heavy bag that I didn't even know I had on, she said. Being able to forgive my dad was more important to my mom than it was for him. She also said that making up with him wasn't an easy choice. Like me, she had questions and fears. But she chose to take the risk because she thought that being happy might be worth it. I'm still guarded, but I can see changes for the better. Dad has always worked hard to make things right and fix our bond. He's been to family events, pays attention to important dates, and tries to get to know the adult me. Last week, he came to my office with lunch as a treat. We ate sandwiches and watched birds in the park across the street. It felt nice. Not ideal. Not like before, but a move in the right way. I'm not ready to fully accept that they can get along again yet, but I'm more open to the idea. Seeing Mom happy and Dad really trying has made me change my mind a little. Sometimes the old hurts come back to the surface, but I'm learning to deal with them directly instead of letting them grow. I'm still on a journey, and I'm taking each step as it comes. My main goal right now is to heal my own scars and rebuild my relationships at my own pace. Thank you all again for your help and suggestions. If there are any big changes, I'll let you know again. What's going on now? It's been 6 months since my last report, so I thought I'd share. No matter if we're ready or not, life keeps going. These past few months have been no different. The most important news is that Mom and Dad have chosen not to have a big wedding but to renew their vows. A small, private gathering with only close family and friends is what they have planned. Thought it was strange that I agreed with the idea when they told me about it at dinner last month. Not thrilled or angry, just, okay, that might be progress in and of itself. In the past few months, I've seen both of them consistently work hard. Dad has kept coming, and not just for big events. He's also been there for small, everyday things. It was his offer to help me move into a new apartment by painting the living room and putting together furniture. He remembered that it was my half-birthday, which is something we used to do when I was a kid. He came over with cupcakes from my favorite bakery and a gift card to my favorite bookshop. Mom has been there for me the whole time. She gave me room when I needed it and was there when I was ready to talk things over. It's important to us that we bond and be honest with each other on our spa days. She told me that even though she's happy with her dad, she's still not sure if she can fully trust him again during our last spa day. Because she was honest, I knew she wasn't jumping into this without thinking. She was making a choice with her eyes wide open. I've also kept going on my own healing path. Writing in a journal has helped me work through my thoughts. There have been times when I realized that hanging on to Anchor was making me worse off than anyone else. It's not easy, and I still have hard days. But I'm taking steps to get better. My mom and dad and I agreed to take a 2-day trip. I remember going to the lake house with my family every summer as a child. We hadn't spent that much time together in years. Sometimes things got tense, like when my dad made a joke about the good old days and I lost it. But there were also times when people laughed and really connected. Dad set a marshmallow on fire while we were trying to make s'mores, just like he used to do. We also went camping and played board games. I saw how Mom and Dad talked to each other on that trip. It wasn't the perfect love I remembered from my youth. Instead, it was more mature and real. Even though they didn't always agree, I saw them deal with it with respect and understanding. I heard them arguing about plans for the future one night while they were talking on the porch. They listened to each other, found a middle ground, and hugged each other to end the talk. It was a short moment, but I remember it. I'm not saying that everything is fine now. Sometimes old hurts come back to the surface, and I'm still working on trusting my dad completely. That being said, I'm in a much better place now than I was when I wrote that post. Next month, Mom and Dad are renewing their vows. They asked me to stand up with them during the event. I agreed after giving it some thought. It feels right and is a sign that our family is getting better and moving on. My mom asked me to help her choose her dress, and my dad asked me what I thought about his vows. It's both strange and beautiful. Thank you to everyone who has read my story and given me help. It's been really helpful having your help. It's been hard, but this journey has taught me a lot about how to forgive, grow, and understand how complicated love and family can be. Even though I don't know what will happen, I'm hopeful and willing to learn. There will likely be more problems and times of worry and pain in the future. But I think I'm better prepared to deal with them now. Once more, thank you all for being on this trip with me.